Welcome to a special edition of DG Courtroom, and today I am very honored to be joined by a special guest, Justin Machan. Hope I got your name right.
Nailed it.
Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, so Justin, for the listeners out there, Justin has won. He's achieved. Now, Justin, I don't know how much of you listen to the podcast, but there's some of the terms I might throw around during the course of this podcast may seem weird to you. If they do, just jump in and ask me, like, what the hell are you talking about? So listeners out there, Justin has achieved the glory. He's won hundreds of thousands of dollars playing DFS. You're in college right now, right? You're a student at Chapel Hill currently. So some of the contests that Justin has won, he's won the FanDuel Monster in baseball, NBA, NHL, damn, and NFL. Jesus, man, leave something for the rest of us. And for FanDuel MLB, you have achieved the ultimate. You've qualified for the Playboy Mansion Championship, right? So that's making a live final. Then you went to the Playboy Mansion. So, can't get much better than that. So, Justin, welcome to the show and glad to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That Playboy Championship win was definitely the highlight.
So why don't you, before we get into the show, kind of plug whatever you want to plug. Tell people where they can find you on Twitter. Let people know about your website, and then we'll get into the show.
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is just my name. It's Justin Machan. It's MACMAHAN. And I started posting fantasy sports advice on Twitter about a year and a half ago. Once I started really learning a lot, and I was doing well myself, and I couldn't find any sites out there that really served the needs that I wanted when I originally started playing DFS. And so I kind of taught myself after being dissatisfied with what I found out there. And after I learned everything that I felt like I needed to know and that I was looking for in the first place, I thought, it would have been a lot easier if this was all in one place and if there was a community that could have kind of taught me and showed me the ropes. And so that was kind of the goal behind it. Was I started teaching a few of my friends how to play, and I thought, I could do this on a larger scale and build a community and have a lot of fun with it. And so that's exactly what we were able to do. I started it with my roommate at UNC, and it's a bunch of college guys, and we've added people from all over the country, guys, but also some people in their 20s, a couple guys in their 30s. And we've built a big team, and we have a lot of fun. I don't know anybody that works for any other DFS related companies that says that they have nearly as much fun as our guys have. So that's a big thing for us.
So I don't even think you said the name of your website yet. And the name is?
It's dailyfantasyinsider.com. And then we have our paid content on dfiuniversity.com.
Okay.
And we kind of go by DFI.
Okay, and then basically, yeah. So as throughout the show, we'll get into a little bit more about Justin's website and kind of what he's planning to do there. And then we'll also, and obviously, I know all the listeners out there, we'll definitely get into about his playing style and how is he able to take down some of these large tournaments, and and obviously because the listeners want this to be entertaining as well, we'll get into some stupid, funny questions as well. But first, man, let's talk a little bit. Let's just get to know you a little bit. So, where are you from?
I grew up in Charlotte until I was about 8 years old, pretty close to Davidson. Then I moved out to California and grew up in Los Angeles until I graduated high school. And now I'm finally back here in North Carolina attending UNC.
Okay. And so, have you always been a sports fan? Give me your favorite teams, favorite sports.
Yeah, my dad went to UNC, and so I grew up a huge Tar Heel fan. Ever since I could speak or watch anything, I was sitting on his lap as a little kid watching UNC basketball. And so absolutely surreal to get the national championship while I'm here. That was awesome. And I kind of have a weird collection of teams. I'm a big fan of the Warriors because I've been following Steph Curry for his whole career.
Oh, really?
I've been a Warriors fan since 2008, so I think I'm allowed to. I was really bummed that we got rid of Harrison Barnes, though. I mean, not that we got rid of him. He obviously got a good deal in Dallas, but that was disappointing for me.
So are you like? It was like any part of you upset when the Warriors got Durant? Because I mean, come on. It's unfair.
I was upset that it meant we didn't keep Barnes. I like Kevin Durant a lot. If we had gotten someone like Westbrook, I would have been really bummed because I don't really like him. But I'm really happy to have Durant. I think he's an awesome guy, and he's a really good fit for the team, clearly. So, but I was disappointed that it meant Barnes was heading out.
Well, I mean, first of all, as a DFS player, this must can you separate like your fan of Golden State from being a DFS player? Because a DFS player we hate the Warriors, right? There's nothing worse than the Warriors.
They're tough.
They're 20
Yeah,
point
they're
favorites.
definitely
We can't
tough.
play them. It's absurd.
Yeah, no, it's awful. And I just got burned by Draymond Green. I knew he would be like 70% owned on the first slate, and I watch a lot of games, and I know he's very capable of putting up no fantasy points at all or a huge game. And so, of course, he puts up a triple double with 5 blocks and 3 steals in game one. So that's a decision that I live with. I make on purpose. So hopefully they don't burn me. But yeah, they burn you all the time in
It's
DFS.
just the worst. All right, so besides the Warriors and UNC,
Football, I'm a big Redskins fan. When I was a little kid, my aunt, whose last name is Moss, told me that we were related to Santana Moss, and I believed her for so long that I was already a dedicated fan, my NFL fanhood for my whole life. So that was kind of a low blow by her. And so those are my favorite teams that don't make any sense. And then the Phillies and the Flyers are my favorite teams for baseball and hockey, because my uncle and my mom and that whole side of the family, they're from Philly.
yes,
So they got me on to those 2 teams.
yes, you basically have like every part of the country covered. You have like the West Coast,
absolutely. It's really been fun, actually.
West Coast, East Coast, and down south.
Yeah, because when I travel around the country, I'm usually able to catch one of my teams somewhere. So it works out pretty well.
Honestly, if I could like go back as a kid, like that's, if I ever became a father, I think that's what I would do, man. I'd give my son or daughter, a team on like each coast. I think that's the way to go.
No, I'm glad the way it worked out. People make fun of it all the time because they say it doesn't make any sense, but I have such deep reasons for rooting for each of those teams that I don't see myself ever switching. So it's kind of fun. I'll just stick with this random collection of teams all over.
All right, so how did you get into DFS? So I've been doing DFS, man. First of all, I'm a lot older than you. I could be your father, I think, in terms of age. So this is my 5th year. Which and like the changes in DFS throughout the last 5 years it's been insane. But so I think it's my 5th year. So how did you get into it? How long you been playing? All that good stuff.
So I think I've been playing for about 5 years. I played on Draft Street for a while.
Wait, how old are you?
I am 21 right now, but I kind of played with my uncle for a couple years.
I was gonna say, man,
he would.
That's the
yeah, no, he was really into Draft Street fantasy football and golf. And so we used to kind of pick teams together and watch the games, and that got me into it, like just the fun side of it, because I wasn't really making any money from it. If he won, he'd give me a few bucks, but for the enjoyment of it. And so that was a good way for me to get introduced to it, to just have a lot of fun with it. And then I was on a plane my freshman year of high school, and I read a magazine about a guy who plays fantasy baseball for a living. And I just kind of thought, you know what, if this guy can do it, I'm going to do it. And so I bought a bunch of books about baseball stats, and I did my due diligence before I really got into it. And then I deposited $25 on DraftKings and FanDuel, and utilized the bonuses that they gave out, and just started building from there. And
like back in the day, they actually gave legitimate bonuses too.
Yeah, they were a little easier to actually use.
Yeah.
So I kind of utilized that off of the initial deposit and just kind of did a lot of cash games and a few GPPs here and there. Thing I've been fortunate enough to do, at least in the beginning, was that when I really felt good about a team and I joined a higher stakes GBP than I usually do, I kept winning. I'm really good fortune with analyzing my teams properly, how good they were going to be. So I would join a $25 GBP, and I took down a $3,000 league. Later, I felt really good, and I joined the Monster, and then I won that and won 100,000. And so that really let me take my bankroll to a level that I never expected it to be. Read that article on the plane. It was just a pipe dream. And once I got there, it was
so basically
cool.
within 3 months of playing, you won the Monster, and you won over 100 grand.
Probably about 4 or 5 months after
That's crazy.
I started seriously playing. Yeah, it was very good fortune, and I'm super thankful that it all worked out the way it did.
All right, we'll definitely get more into the DFS part, obviously, later throughout the show. But let's get back to more important questions, like what is college like these days? Now, I know a lot of my listeners. I think I have a couple grandfathers. Actually, I know I have a couple grandfathers. I know I have many people who are married with, I won't say miserable, but they're married with numerous kids. They're like me, just have a job, and we're making lineups in our bathrooms, under our desk. We're hiding from our bosses. So bring us back to the college experience. What is it like these days? Because I am old.
College is fantastic. It as good as you remember it. That's probably still how good it is, if not better, because now parties are set up on Facebook events, and you can just get a group text or all kinds of easy ways to communicate fun things that are going on. So it's probably a lot easier than it even was back when you were in it to have a good time. And it's fantastic. I've talked to my dad about it, and because he went to UNC, and he thinks that I'm having a better time than anybody had when he was there. So
all right.
it's probably getting better and better. And my kids will tell me the same thing, and I'll be so jealous of them.
What is like? So how does this is one? I know I won't harp too much on the college stuff. But so like, how does the social media aspect, as you already mentioned, like planning parties on Facebook or whatever, like something like Tinder, right? Where I'm not gonna lie, I still occasionally use Tinder. Not a huge fan of that app or other apps like that though. But in college though, there doesn't seem like there'd be a need for it, right? Because there's young people everywhere. I mean, are people still using? I guess people. I have no idea. Like, are people still using apps like that in college?
I don't think it's as common as it is once people get out. I mean, there definitely are people that have it, I'm sure, but it's not that hard to meet people going out to parties and going out to restaurants, because everybody lives. UNC particularly, it's just there's a main street called Franklin Street.
Yeah,
happens, so it's not hard to meet people.
Yeah, I mean, because basically, in part of DFS, as you well know, I mean, I basically say my favorite mottos is the slate dictates who we play, right? Like college is like a 14, 15 game slate every day. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like the options are everywhere.
There's lots of good value.
Yeah, exactly. Regardless of of what you're looking for. If you're looking for a guy, girl, if there's just it's limitless. All right, so fascinating. So. Speaking of, and I'm not sure what your sexual preference is. Doesn't really matter to me. But are the ladies, fellas, whoever you want to go with, are they impressed with your DFS celebrity? Is that like a thing?
Well, so right now I have a girlfriend, and I'm extremely happy with her, and we're having a great time. But before
that's not what he told me pre-show. That's not what you told me pre-show. I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
So before I met her, I was actually worried that I didn't want my DFS, like whatever my status in fantasy sports, to impact my relationships. I mean, first of all, I play fantasy sports. It's not like I'm a real celebrity, but I wouldn't want that to matter at all. And so when I met my girlfriend, she had no idea and had literally never heard of me at all. So that was an ideal situation to just be able to get to know each other as people. And I've had a few people come up to me and say something about it before out at parties or something, but not a big deal. It's not like I'm in movies and everybody knows who I am. That would be a true pain.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things though that I desperately think I missed out on, because I think you're being a little too modest there. I know. Well, first, and you could say yes. While girls or whoever might not be that impressed with fantasy sports, they would be impressed with oh yeah, I just won that for $100,000 or whatever. Money's money, right? But the thing I can tell you, being an attorney, I mean, if I go up if I mention like DFS to any girl, or to a girl like I won the slam or something like that, I mean, like, man, it's like that. It's actually funny. Some of the looks that I've gotten when I even try to explain anything in the DFS realm by let's say a girl even approaching the late 20-ish, even mid 20s, whatever the age is. Someone in my profession especially, it's just, man, I get looks like, what are you freaking talking about? You're an idiot. So yeah.
It's not doing you wonders.
No, I would say the opposite. Unless I tell them I have to like literally list out. Oh yeah, I won X amount. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Right. All right. So you did make a live final, which is awesome. Like that's one thing we'll get into when we talk about the heart of the the DFS part of the show. Like I really don't play qualifiers, and that's because as most people who are playing the qualifiers are the people who are entering every contest, and also the qualifiers. First place, live final. You make the live finals to Playboy Mansion. Second place, a bag of peanuts. So to me, it hasn't felt like it's been a wise investment, and I've just put my money elsewhere. But you've not only did you make a live final. Wait, did you win it, or did you just make it?
I did. No, I did. I came in first place. Yeah.
Yeah. So you actually not only did you make the live final, you took it down, which is unbelievable. And we'll get to that.
Might as well win.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll get to that. Again in a few minutes, but just a little bit about the Playboy Mansion. Obviously, that's something. I could think probably any sex would be pretty. That just got to be an unbelievable place to go, kind of see, right?
Yeah. No, it's an amazingly cool party house. and we were actually the last party that was hosted there before Hugh Hefner sold it. So that was kind of interesting to find out, because there was a lot of girls there that came as volunteer models, and they said, like, yeah, we didn't want to pass up the chance to be at the last party here.
Hold on. I think, hold on. While you talk, I think, okay. Can you hear the music?
I can.
Okay. I think it needs to be playing as you talk about the Playboy Mansion experience. I think this music needs to be playing in the background. So go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, so it was an amazing experience, and I have some good friends at FanDuel. Like, my account manager, he's awesome. I was actually his first account that he got when he got the job. I happened to win the Monster the night before, so we both kind of joined the VIP section of FanDuel at the same time, if you will. And so he hooked me up and let me bring extra friends on the trip. So I ended up having 3 friends with me. We all stayed in the big suite that they put you in the hotel, and we had a fantastic time at the mansion. You know, when you first get there, for whatever reason, the bus arrives at the mansion 5 minutes before the slate actually locks. So I told my friends, guys, focus for 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes, and then go crazy. Run to the bar, do whatever you want, but give me 5 minutes. And Yoenis Cespedes actually got scratched in those 5 minutes. And he wasn't in our lineup, so it didn't actually affect us. But he was like 8% owned after it locked, because almost all the other guys were wandering around like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And it was amazing. So it was hard to, we just walked into a corner and focused for like 5 minutes before we went.
I wonder if they do that on purpose. It's like to see who can like stay, have some focus and concentration those last 5 minutes while you have, all the hot girls walking around.
It's just another way to cater to the big sharks who are totally used to it, and all the new guys who have never made a live final. They're all excited about it, and I should have been one of those guys, but luckily I was able to focus for like 5 more minutes.
Nice. So, I mean, are you pretty much, you could just kind of hang out with the other live finalists, or do you have like kind of carte blanche to go check out the Playboy Mansion? How much can you actually see of the mansion?
Yeah, so you can't go into Hugh's actual house, like the main middle house, Hugh's home, at least he was when we were there. So
right.
You can't go inside and bother him. But everything else is open. You can pretty much go everywhere else. We went and played basketball. I mean, the pool, obviously, the grotto, and then all the like side rooms that I didn't even know exist.
Wait. So you actually went in the pool? Because I mean, let's be honest. Like with the stuff in that pool, like there's the legendary tales about what's actually in the.
Yeah, apparently I wasn't in the grotto at the time, but apparently some girls started taking their tops off, and then one girl took off her bottoms, and they actually shut it down. They told her, like, you can't do that. And so it's definitely not as wild as it used to be, but
right.
It was still a really interesting experience to say the least.
Okay. That's got to be awesome. So we already talked about, so basically it sounds like you started making money pretty fast in DFS. So it sounds like you were pretty much a natural, right? I mean, it sounds like after 3-4 months, was that kind of quick for you?
Yeah, no, it was one of the quickest trajectories to being a big time DFS player that I've heard of. And I definitely some luck involved there. I mean, there's no way to be 100% sure when you submit your first monster entry that it is the best team you've made. But for me, it worked out that way, so it was awesome.
Yeah, I think I've told my listeners, and by no means have I made a live final. I've been in the Playboy Mansion, but I think I think my 3rd or 4th week of playing, I was, it was like a $2-3 entry fee and like a tournament with 90,000 people. James Harden was questionable. He ended up playing that night. I got him at like 2% owned. He went off for like 85, 90 FanDuel points. And then, and then I finished second, and that's how my bankroll got built. It was like, occasionally you need like lucky, fluky things to happen like that.
Was that a Christmas Day slate like 4 years ago?
It may have been,
because that was one of my bigger wins also when I first started playing, maybe 3 years ago. James Harden was questionable going into Christmas Day, and I got him 2% owned, and he went nuts. He might have done that multiple times because he usually plays through questionable tags.
That was one of the keys with Harden. Like I just saw like some beat writer tweeting out, "Oh, don't worry, just saw Harden, he's gonna play." Even though nowadays, if since we're all glued into like Twitter, like it's like it's our jobs. Everyone would have seen that tweet, and probably a lot of us would have played Harden. But back then, like a lot of people were playing DFS and weren't even monitoring Twitter. It was like just a different world back then.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, doing research like that, you've really had to change how in depth you go in your
Yep.
research now since back then.
Yep, entirely. All right, so let's talk. Let's go back to your website because again, that's obviously one of the main reasons you are on here. Now I get the question all the time from not only my listeners but just family members, anyone. I mean, as me and you kind of talked in pre-show. There's so much, let's call it content out there. I was going to say crappy content. I will. You know what? I will say crappy content out there. Um, a lot of people are built, have DFS sites looking to make a quick buck. I think some of them do have good intentions, but I just think a lot of the sites are not very good, and it's people giving advice that shouldn't be giving advice. So, like, just so the listeners know, like, Justin does have this website, which he's going to talk about, and like, I've seen it, I've been a part of it, and I can recommend it. So all listeners out there, you guys can go check it out. I mean, I know you guys a lot of times will ask me for sites, and I'm sometimes a lot of times I'm very hesitant to give specific sites out because there's just so many are I just don't trust. But yours is one of the few ones I like. I like what you guys are doing over there. So why don't you just
Thank you.
go? Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your site? What makes it I guess what makes it stand out, if you could pick a couple things from all the other stuff out there. Also if you want to talk about just what's kind of your goal for the site, what's your overall
For
thesis,
sure.
if you can say that, whatever you want to say, tell listeners about the site. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah. So when I first started it, when I first had the idea, it was really because I was going to all these other sites and I was reading these articles and I was just thinking article after article, that wasn't that helpful. And then I go to another site and I was like, well, that didn't help me very much. And so I was like, I think I could really do this better. If I really knew who to pick, I could write these articles a lot better. And so it kind of started with, I could do this better if I only knew what I was doing. And so then once I learned what to do, I thought, okay, well, I should go back to that. And then once it kind of got going, I thought, well, I want to make this a lot of fun, because a lot of the sites, I did find some sites that I thought, oh, this is pretty good, but it's just so, it's about what kind of, how much exposure do you want to have to this player, assuming that you're making 25 lineups. And I just thought that's not a fun way to play at all. So
25,
we decided,
125 lineups.
right, yeah. I mean, people are making so many lineups, and I was making, and so I was like, well, what do I do with 45% exposure? Do I play him or not? I mean, it sounds like not, but if it was 51%, then I do. So I was like, this isn't really helpful. And so we kind of came up with the concept of assigning players the tag of must have. Just play this guy. And whether you're making one lineup, 5 lineups, just put this guy in your lineups. And most of our listeners are just playing 1 to a couple lineups. And so that they really like the way that we tell them, this is our most confident pick. And could he be a bust? Of course, everyone in DFS could be a bust, but we're all using him. And I think that's one thing people like to see is I'm joining the monster and I'm playing this guy. So I clearly think he's a really good pick, and I spent all day researching. So even if it doesn't work out, you know that I'm behind this pick also, and I'm not just going to throw out some random guy, and none of our writers are just going to put out some random pick if they don't actually want to use him, because once you say he's a must-have, it better be a good pick. And so that's one thing people like, and we've also just really taken interaction with the writers and the users to a level that really we hadn't seen before we started our company, where people are just asking us questions all day long in the chat room, and really, really take advantage of that and ask hundreds and hundreds of questions a month. And they're only paying $20 a month to be able to do that. And then some guys are just sitting back and just reading through everything that we post, all the articles and all the answers that we give to other people's questions. And so they're just kind of getting the most of it in a shorter time period, because they don't have to ask the questions themselves. They can just scroll through and quickly read all the answers. So it's a really good system for everybody. It allows people who are kind of shy, don't want to just be talking nonstop back and forth. They can read through everything. But the guys who really want to interact with us can ask as many questions as they want. And it's just a good way for us to kind of get to know our users and them get to know us and feel good about what we're seeing.
And so again, you guys have articles throughout the course of the day covering each of the slates, right?
Yeah, so we cover every main slate. We put out must-haves for every slate, and then we have DFIU articles, which are articles that are exclusive for the members of each sport on DFIUniversity.com. And we don't put them out for absolutely every slate, because we don't want to just force it. Find our users that they always ask us, is there a DFIU must-have today? which is an additional player to lock in. And some days we were like, look, we could just throw somebody out there, but he's not truly a complete lock. And so we'll explain that. We'll say, this is the guy who's closest to being a lock, but here's why he's not quite. And so we try to just keep everything as straightforward as we can be without just giving away a lineup. We never provide a full lineup, which much to the dismay of a lot of our users, but a lot of our users really like that. They say, I think it's a lot more fun that I have to make my own decisions and when they win, because they feel like I actually did something. It's not like I just was handed a lineup by someone that is an expert and did all the work for me. I really had to make some choices. I really had to decide, who do I like better out of these 4 or 5 guys that they told me to consider. And so it makes it a more fun experience for people. And you can just tell by the reactions people have on Twitter after they win. They're always exuberant, just sharing their success, because I'm sure part of it is they're proud of themselves too. They know that they had a hand in their own success.
Yeah, I mean, it's always crazy to me how many people want lineups. It's just, I mean, like 90% of the fun of playing DFS is building your own lineup. Like
Right.
going through the grind of the research, and as much as stressful and painful as it can be, and that's the beauty of it in a way. It's just all about putting the lineup together yourself, and obviously, like you said, then when you achieve the ultimate glory or you lose, it's then you can look back and say, oh man, I mean, what a great pick I made. I mean, that was that the research paid off or whatever. But it's I think it takes away just so much from the DFS experience if you're just using someone else's lineup there. I mean, I never understood like the fulfillment if that's
right.
the course you wanted to go.
So what we try to do is we have a header on each sport where we give you all the players we think you should.
Yes, I have used that header.
Yeah, I've actually used it myself. When I don't have time, if one of our analysts is in the chat that day, I'll just use the header also, which is how it's a pretty good product when you're using it yourself and you trust it. And so, yeah, the header just kind of washes away all the players that you don't want to consider, because I mean, there's hundreds of options on a lot of slates, especially like a 15-game slate. So our header is like, all right, here's the 30 guys that you should pick from. And so it just does so much of the initial research for you and cuts it down to the guys where you can still make your own decisions here, but you're not at risk of picking someone who's horrible, because they wouldn't find themselves in the header if they were a terrible pick.
Yep, and that's something that all the listeners out there, I mean, you guys have heard me say on every dang podcast I do. I mean, like especially if it's a large slate and whatever the sport, NBA, MLB, you have to narrow the player pool. I mean, you can't be staring all day long. If it's a large slate at a player pool of like 200 guys, you're going to drive yourself insane. You got to find a way to narrow it down.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of exactly our mission is. We don't want our users to go crazy. We want them to do something, and we want them to have fun. We want them to engage with us and preserve the competitive nature of DFS, but we also don't want them to go insane. So we narrow the player pool down to make it a very easy thing to do in 15, 20 minutes. If you don't have much time, you could still build a good lineup with the header.
Okay, so last question before we get to kind of exactly what your kind of playing strategy is, and then you can tell all the listeners how they too can make the Playboy Mansion final. But so, all right, so if you listen to my podcast, Justin, I'm not sure how much you do or don't. I have a critically acclaimed. It's been nominated for an Emmy. It's called Dream Killers. Oh, hold on. I need a producer, man. These sound effects kill me if I'm not prepared. Hold on 1 second here. Just talks amongst yourselves while I try to get this. I should have been ready for this. So anyway, I have a segment, Justin, that is critically acclaimed, Emmy nominated. It is called Dream Killers and Dream Lovers. Now you can see the sound effects were way off. That's what I mean. I was unprepared. Sometimes
I'm honored to be on the section, even if you messed it up.
You never know what's going to happen on the show, man. I didn't even know I was going to play the music, and I wasn't ready. It came off bad. But the gist is, we have a segment, Dream Killers, Dream Lovers. So what I want from for the NBA season, I want you to tell me your dream killer, your dream lover. In other words, who's the one guy who cost you the most money? Who's the one guy who made you the most money? Like for me, Andre Mother effing Drummond, he's been asleep the entire season. I loathe that guy with a passion. Blake Griffin's a close second for me. Dream lover, that's a tough one, man. It's probably got to be Westbrook, even though I know it's probably a lame answer. But who are yours?
So I would actually put Westbrook into my dream killer category because I hate playing the chalk superstar. And there just have been so many slates where he puts up a triple-double.
Yep.
That he won't. And I guess he doesn't cost me that much because I'm usually ready for him to hit 5-6 times value. And even if he puts up 80, he's not really crushing value. He's just hitting it because he costs so much. But the big dream lover for me this year was Hernan Gomez. I was riding the Hernan Gomez train for about 2 weeks.
Which one? The Knicks or Nuggets?
Oh, Willie. Sorry, Knicks. You're right. I should have specified Knicks. Willie Hernan Gomez. I was riding that train for about 2 weeks when he was still sneaking under the table around 5% ownership. A steady 6% lock at my center position every single night, and I was loving it. And then finally, his ownership really started picking up. But for a while, he probably, given how much information is out there about DFS, there aren't a lot of players who slide under the radar for as long as Willie Hernan Gomez did this year. So he was my dream lover.
I mean, I was playing Rudy Gobert every night in cash games for it must have been a month straight, and he was hitting value, or I hate the value word, but he was hitting like 4 or 5 times the salary. It was a lock, and he was like 1 or 2% owned every slate. It was unbelievable. I mean, so like you said, there was I was, and that's one thing I always tell people when I do like one-on-one consultations. I tell people you got to track ownership. You got to become an expert on ownership. Because like that's half the battle. I mean, if you can get a guy who's low owned, who's crushing it every night, that for whatever reason no one's aware of, for Hernan Gomez, it's probably because everyone just hates Hornacek, hates the Knicks. Things like that can probably fall under the radar. But yeah, I mean, ownership is such a vital thing that I think a lot of people just aren't paying attention to close enough on a consistent basis.
Yeah, that one guy that I'll give to your listeners for next season is Nick Vucevic. Every time he plays the Miami Heat, he's always about 1 or 2% owned, and I'm pretty sure he averages over 50 points a game against them.
Yep, it crushes Whiteside.
When he goes against Whiteside, he absolutely crushes him. If you watch the film, he just completely dismantles him every time. So anytime I see Magic against the Heat, I'm joining the biggest league there is because I know I've got a lock at center.
Yep. I'm with you. I think I'm pretty sure I remember the last time they played Miami this year. I think I tweeted something like that out before those two teams faced off. All right, let's jump into the meat of this. Well, for me, the meat was probably the Playboy Mansion, but for the listeners, it'll probably be this. As I know, if you're playing DFS, you probably got into it first, probably, and I don't know I don't know if this is true or not, but FanDuel, DraftKings, before they stopped doing advertising because they made buffoons and clowns of themselves. They had commercials on every 2 seconds with people saying it's so easy to win $100,000. It's, I won $87,000 in my first day of playing, DFS. It's just, so people who play DFS, they want to win the big tournament. They want to win lots of money, right? They want to retire. They want to have this be their full-time job. They want to go to a live final. They want to go to the Playboy Mansion. Now, you've actually done a lot of those things. So let's kind of get into that and how you were able to achieve that. So now and we've kind of hit on this a little bit over in the show already. It's what's over the last 4 or 5 years of DFS, the changes have been pretty extreme. Like when I first started playing, I would play only multi-entry GPPs. I was cashing at an unbelievably high rate. There were new players coming in all the time. There were not tons of sharks and pros using 150 lineups a night, and nowadays, unfortunately, that is the case. There has been this big shift. I don't play. So I've changed the way that I play. I still play some multi-entry GPPs, but I play a lot of single entry GPPs. Almost every single entry GPP out there.
Yeah, me too.
But in terms of your strategy, you were able to take down these a qualifier and these large GPPs. And the monster is not a huge entry size, but still. So why don't you just tell the listeners a little bit about your kind of strategy, your own playing DFS strategy?
Yeah, so my favorite leagues to join, you nailed it on the head, the single entry GPPs. I think people usually take just the right approach that I want them to take. Because in cash games, the best picks are usually over-owned. And then in multi-entry GPPs, every single player seems to be represented. So
every player.
So
backup center will be owned by someone.
Exactly. So that just gets frustrating because a player will go nuts that no one in their right mind would ever pick, but he's in Sahil's 467th lineup, so he wins. And Sahil's a good guy. I like him a lot, and I respect how successful he is, but I don't think it's a lot of fun for everybody else to see the parentheses 467 next to the winning entry.
Right.
But then the single entry GPPs, it's a lot easier to project ownership because you're getting people's what is their safest GPP line or their best GPP line, and so you can really go with the contrarian plays in those entries and those contests, and you get them at really low ownership. I get players 1% and 2% owned all the time in those leagues that are 7 to 10% leagues, because if people have multiple lineups, they're willing to risk it with the whole 5% exposure, 10% exposure, whatever. They're not willing to include that guy in their lineups. So that's my favorite type of GPP.
All right. I think first, I think it's my fault. I didn't ask the right question to start. I think we should take a step back first. So the first question that I think I need to know, listeners need to know. So how many lineups are you playing, right? Because I mean, to take down a tournament, to make a live final, I always envision it's these mother effers like like Chipotle Attic, like Papa Big Gates, all these guys,
right.
Hope of Sunshine, whatever that guy's name is. It's all the same people who are max entering every contest. So tell the listeners a little bit about how many, because I mean, when me and you first spoke, and this is one reason why me and you also, I have been reluctant to have people on the show who've taken down large tournaments, because it's I don't think they relate to the normal player who's playing 1 or 2 lineups a night, who's playing $5 to $10 a night. But your playing strategy is really unique, I think. So why don't you just tell everyone a little bit about how many lineups you actually play a night?
Yeah, so I build one optimal lineup, and I put it in each tournament one time. So a lot of people will join one tournament a bunch of times with different lineups. But my thinking on this is that if you use your optimal lineup once, in the long run, you will do better than if you put in suboptimal lineups into the same league. And so you're just maximizing how much your optimal lineups are able to win you money. If you put them in each league one time, then you're not really hurting yourself. You're not capping your upside anywhere. Increasing your downside. You're increasing your one night downside, but not your long run downside, where you're just getting to play your optimal lineup each night.
So let's say you're going to play the Slam on a given night. How many entries and lineups will you have for that? Will you just have one lineup in the Slam?
Yeah,
so you will play one lineup in the Slam. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, and that's one thing that also makes it fun to do Daily Fantasy Insider, because sometimes our users end up with my exact lineup.
Right.
I don't ever give it away, but if I'm giving you all my favorite guys. So
right.
There's some guys who they're amazing. They probably end up with my lineup 5 out of 7 days a week. They listen to everything I say so carefully, and they purposely make my lineup. If those guys tie me for first in the Slam, it doesn't bother me that much, because I'm also winning. I just won the Monster, so
right.
hurt my ROI when I'm tying our users or our own guys within our company. But it's not the end of the world, because most of our users aren't flooding every single tournament with a lineup like I am. So it's a good system for me to play this way. I can relate to our users really well, and when they win if they end up with the same lineup as me or most of my picks, it doesn't really cost me that much on any given night.
All right, so let's say you're playing. Let's say it's a Wednesday night in the NBA. It's a 12-game slate, and you're playing the Slam, you're playing the Monster, the Slam, and then you're also playing like some single entry stuff, like like the Windmill, like the $50 or $100 single entry fee.
Yeah.
Or a bunch. You're playing almost every single entry fee. Will you use different lineups for the multi-entry GPP, like the Slam, the Monster versus a single entry tournament?
No, I'm just making one. And a couple times that people have gotten in my head, especially in the beginning, and told me you got to play multiple lineups. And so I started doing it, and I started making 3 for probably a month, and I was tracking my results, and my optimal lineup was doing so much better. And I also found myself accidentally getting totally screwed, because I'd have 3 lineups built, scratched 5 minutes before lock, and I only had time to fix one of them. So I would fix my optimal one, and then I would just throw my money away on the others. And I didn't even enjoy it. I no longer enjoyed watching the games at all, because I was like, all right, well, I have this guy 50% owned. So if I have him in one lineup, it's actually better for me if he does poorly, because my other 2 lineups will benefit from 50% of the league not getting it. So it just kind of ruined all the fun. As anyone who's played multiple lineups knows, it's not nearly as enjoyable to watch the games and follow along. So given that I felt like I was actually losing money from the system and I wasn't enjoying it, it was an easy decision to go back to just making one lineup.
So and then, so that also this is fascinating to me. So also not only like you'll have the same lineup regardless of if it's multi-entry or single entry, but also you'll have the same lineup regardless of like size of a contest, right? I mean, if the monster, which is like 300 people, versus the slam, which is like 8,000 people. Let's say
Right.
you're playing also, I don't even remember some of the other names. A tournament with like 30,000 people. Like so, you'll use the same lineup in each of those.
Yeah. I make an optimal GPP lineup that I think, and I'll often put it in my head-to-head games also, because I'm doing my research in such a way that I don't think
That's
I'm really
crazy. I got to stop the show. So that you'll also use that optimal lineup, the slam. That's also can be your head-to-head lineup. That's crazy.
It can be, yeah. Not every night that I will do that. Every now and then I'll change it. But I'd say probably 5 out of 7 days a week it's the same. Because I'll find players that I think are as good as the players that will be high owned. And they have as much upside and they're as good of plays that are just going to be lower owned. So I'm still confident that my full lineup will beat a typical chalk lineup. And if I think that the chalk plays are really good, I'll use them. So even in my GPPs, I'm not going to just miss out on a guy that I think is a lock to perform. So I just kind of build my team as I prioritize low ownership if it's a toss up between two players. Otherwise, I'm just going for the best players.
Yeah, and see, this is one thing that one reason why out of many that I think DFS can be fascinating, right? Like, so I disagree with that philosophy, but hell, you've had way more success than me. So who the hell am I to disagree with that? But like to me, like if obviously, the more people that are in a contest in a field, I think the riskier you have to get with your plays because it's harder to differentiate.
Well, that's why it's easier to cash in the bigger fields, because it's easier to cash, but it's harder to win.
Right.
So, and I would rather win than cash, but I also don't want to just throw my money away with ridiculous risks. I mean, you'll see if you scroll down to the bottom of GPPs, you'll see guys who weren't even playing or like who were doubtful at 2% ownership.
Yep.
So for me, it's like, oh, if I can just send my normal team in there, I'm going to just beat 20% of people right off the bat that took totally absurd risks thinking that that's what they need to do to win.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, if you look at the top team, sometimes it'll be ridiculous, but that's what'll stand out in your mind. So you kind of have a cognitive bias there to remember the lineups that are just ridiculous, where someone had Bobby Portis on all their lists and they took down the GPPs with him, and he was supposed to be third string. And so you'll just remember stuff like that, and you'll forget when a normal, pretty good lineup wins.
Yeah, I mean that's I don't know if I'm just a dork about DFS, but I find that so fascinating. That strategy. But all right, so let's next talk about tournaments versus cash games. So because you somewhat said sometimes you will play the same lineup.
Sometimes,
right?
Yeah, but sometimes I don't.
Right, but let's talk a little bit about how you're building a cash game lineup, and then also how much, if any, are you playing cash games versus head-to-heads versus GPPs? Because I mean, I tell listeners all the time, like, hey, and this is my own experience. I was a tournament only guy, but again, this was back when DFS first started, and it was so much easier to cash. It's just as DFS has evolved, I've had to evolve how I play. So now I definitely do play cash games, head-to-heads, and all kinds of. I'll play all kinds of contests while still I still specialize or play the most GPPs or tournaments though. But it's like if you had to break down what you play on any given night, how would you break that down? And what would you recommend to the quote unquote regular player out there?
Right. So what I do is not exactly what I would recommend. When I first started, I played probably 60 to 70%, 50-50s and head-to-heads. And the reason that I don't say double ups is because I don't play them. I think that double ups with their allowance of multi-entering, that's where the Sharks use their low stakes entries. And by use, I mean, I don't know if every player is aware of this, but there's a cap on how many times you can enter a contest that costs $2. There's a cap on how many you can enter: $5, $10, and $1. So it's easier for a big shark to just enter 100 times into the $2 double up with the bulk entry feature.
Yep.
And if they'd have to join $2 50-50s one at a time, effort, they'd rather just throw them into the double up. So the double up is just flooded with like huge chunks of shark entries. And a good example of that a few weeks ago, I did join the NASCAR double up because I really liked this contrarian play that we made who crashed, so it ruined it. But I finished 7,000th place and top 5,000 cashed, and I only finished 0.4 points out, or 0.5 or whatever for the lap led. That's the only difference between me cashing, because there were 2,000 people that had the exact same lineup, and it was just like 5 sharks who entered the maximum 400 times or whatever it was.
You hear that lovely NASCAR sounds in the background?
Yeah, what is that?
NASCAR.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, no, that's actually an excellent point to make regarding. I mean, that's one thing that I'll tell people as well. I don't know how much I have hit on this point on the podcast, but I'm telling you, man, like, just if you go, like, so many people want to be lazy and just click on the feature tab on FanDuel and DraftKings and start clicking away at those contests. And if you just spend a couple minutes entering some other stuff, like you said, some 50-50s, getting away from the double ups, the quote unquote feature contests where it is easy for those sharks to do the bulk entries, you'll find lower cash lines. You really will.
Yeah, and for head to heads, I only post head to heads now. I used to join them, but I've heard people criticize other sharks for what they call sniping head to heads, and I don't keep track of which players are good and which players are bad. But I don't want anybody to think that I've targeted them as a head-to-head matchup that I want. So I'll just post my head-to-heads and let people join if they want to play against me.
All right, let's see. Next question. All right, so research. How much time are you spending preparing for a slate? Also, you can talk about. Also, you can. I guess we haven't hit really. So maybe we can talk about it a little bit here. The difference between sports. I guess right now, obviously, MLB is starting up. So, are you preparing longer for MLB? Because obviously MLB, to me, and I'm sure to everyone, it's more data driven. I mean, there are more stats to look at. So kind of how much time are you spending preparing for a slate? How many sites are you on? How many tools are you using? Maybe you're only using your own website, but just, kind of give the people a little bit about just the research that kind of goes into getting ready for a slate.
Yeah, so we definitely don't use our own website because we don't provide any data tools. And that was something we kind of decided from the beginning that we didn't want to be a part of, not because we think there's just that's the most oversaturated aspect of the market is algorithms and projection systems. And we don't really like projection systems, but some of the tools out there are really helpful. I mean, RotoGrinders put together that Court IQ for NBA. I mean, bravo to RotoGrinders for making that a free service to everybody. That would probably be the one thing I would recommend to our users to actually pay to use if it costs anything, but luckily it's free. But so yeah, we use all kinds of sites. We use Baseball Reference a ton, Fangraphs a ton. Fangraphs is a phenomenal site. It used to take me like 5 or 6 hours to research a baseball slate properly, and I've probably been able to cut it down to like 2 because I actually had a guy here at UNC who does computer programming. He built a bot for me that just scrapes all the data that I want from the websites that I use. So now I don't have to load every single page every single day. I can just get it all in one big document. So I'm not using any algorithms to make my projections for me, but I am using bots that just kind of give me all the data faster.
And that's one thing me and you both agree with. I think we talked a little bit about like projections. Like I'm not big on projections, and you don't seem to be really either, right? For the most part.
No, yeah, we tell our users not to look at projections too much because realistically, and we've talked about this, every player is actually on a bell curve of outcomes. And so you want a player whose bell curve is shifted to the right, where he has a higher probability of having a good game. But especially in baseball, there's always like a 5% chance that he's going to put up a 0. The system tells you 12. That's pretty useless. He might hit a home run and go for 18.7, or he might get 0, but he's not likely to actually get 12. And so, of course, it's saying this will be the mean over time. I don't really understand that, and it's not really the most helpful way to prepare the information. So we try to do it differently. We never give our users a specific numerical value that they should expect a player to hit. We just give them a range that we're looking at that we think they're likely to land in.
Very cool. Okay. All right. So we're running out of show, but I asked the lovely people on Twitter for some questions. Got some good questions. I want to hit you up with a couple here. One and we talked a little bit about this, but not entirely. So how much do you focus on the single entry versus the multi entry? If you had to break it down, in terms of like, I play,
I do.
half on single entry, half on multi entry, or what kind of percentage would you kind of say?
Yeah, I'd say as far as the total contests I join, I'm joining more than half single entry.
Yep.
I'm joining even the mini dribbler for $1, like the mini rebound for $12. These are FanDuel leagues, of course. I
Yep.
really like those single entry 50 to 300 users. Those are my favorite leagues, and especially for newer players, that's absolutely what I'd recommend. If you only have $10 to go in on the slate, those smaller single entry GPPs.
What is your head-to-head strategy? What is your head-to-head strategy for both MLB and NBA? And again, we've kind of hit a little on this, but so, like obviously you're creating your quote unquote optimal lineups, right? Which is who you think is going to be your best players for the night. But so if you have your optimal lineup, now some nights, obviously you already mentioned that will be used for everything. That will be used cash games head-to-head for tournament.
Right.
How do you know on what slates you're going to make another optimal lineup? You're going to make a cash game optimal lineup or a head-to-head optimal lineup.
So a lot of days I end up not playing head-to-heads at all if I feel pretty good about most of the chalk picks, and I don't want to have to go against them. But there are times where I think, wow, I think ownership is going to be really high on this guy, or I know that the Sharks algorithms are pumping out this guy, and I really don't think he's a good pick. There have been nights where I'll go snipe every single Sharks head-to-head. I'll go take Sahil's $1,000 head-to-heads, and I'll grab all the guys that I know their algorithms are going to give them this player or these multiple players that I don't think are good. And so at that point, I'm changing all my priorities for that slate to beat their head-to-head teams. And so that's like a different slate altogether if that happens. And so I really start, if I'm going to do head-to-head at all, I start by evaluating the players that I think will be in most head-to-head lineups. And if I think that they're all good picks, I don't really want to go like head-to-head against people if it's only going to come down to 3 guys that are kind of toss-ups. You know what I mean? I don't want to – if I think, those 5 value plays that everyone is going to have to do, joining head-to-head, now you're just going to let the rake beat you both in the long run. If you guys have 6 of the same 9 players, that's not really a smart strategy to go head-to-head against people. So I'll just pull out of cash games if I think my lineup is going to be too chalky if I enter them.
Interesting. I mean,
Which
yeah,
is the opposite.
that's
A lot of people say you want the chalky players. I want the guy who's 90% owned in a cash game. And you probably want him if there's just one. But if there's 5 guys, like if the Rocky stack is just undoubtedly the best stack on the board, it's kind of pointless because you're all going to get beat by the rake in the long run because FanDuel's taking 10% and you all have almost the same lineup. So what differentiates you winning and losing is so insignificant that you're not good enough on those 2 or 3 players to beat the rake.
Yeah, I mean that's a very interesting way to look at it because there's no doubt. I mean, I would say every freaking night of the week, how many players do we already know who are going to be in everyone's cash game lineup? At least 3 or 4, right? I mean, every night. I mean, for any sport. So I mean that's an interesting way to also. So to listeners out there, the slate dictates who we play. The slate also dictates what contest we enter, according to you, right? Yeah. So I mean that makes sense.
It's tough because one of the big things out there for DFS is be consistent, join the same leagues every night, and it's tough because I don't want to tell people be inconsistent, just throw your money around wild. I also don't think it's all that smart to just join the same leagues every night, regardless of the slate. Finally joined the Monster last year. I had 3 guys that were like minimum salary on FanDuel that I thought had upside to hit home runs. And they were in great matchups. I would have picked them if they were 4,000. And I thought, this is the best team I've ever made. At that point, it's like, I don't usually join the Monster, and everyone says to play consistent, but I'm pretty sure this is the best team I've ever made. So at that point, I made the decision to go ahead and join the Monster, and that's when I won the 100,000. So it's tough because I don't want to tell people to be inconsistent and just throw money around. But I also don't really believe that you should do the same thing every night because sometimes your research is better than others and you know it.
Yep. Interesting. All right. So let's see. I don't know if I asked this question yet or not. I don't think I did. What is the most important piece? This was a Twitter question. I should have put, you know what? I should have given a shout out to the people who actually pose these questions. Everyone loves shout outs, man.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Sorry guys. But this was another Twitter question. What is the most important piece of information when doing research on a slate that you look for? And then does it vary by sport?
Yeah, it absolutely varies for sport, but the thing that doesn't vary for sport is ownership. You want to start looking at the slate. I think that's a smart thing to do is make a prelim lineup without doing any research and figure out, all right, all these guys look really good to me. And just because my quick prelim, I ended up with them. And then you want to dig into that a little more and see, are there people promoting them out there? Search their name on Twitter, see if everyone's talking about them. I think this guy is going to be highly owned. And so that's the piece of information that applies to every sport. And then sport by sport, it totally varies. For basketball, it's all about injuries. For football, it's about individual matchups. And for baseball, it's about upside, really.
Wait, so let's go back to the ownership piece, though. All right, so let's take yesterday for an example. Yeah, now I'm not sure exactly what day this podcast will be posted, but yesterday was the first day of the NBA playoffs. Cleveland was playing Indiana. LeBron to me was a lock, even though, quite honestly, I thought he'd be higher on than he was. He ended up, I think he was around 48%, like in the slam on FanDuel, on DraftKings, and like the crossover, he's around 38%. So let's say you thought he was going to be around 50% going into that slate. How would you have handled LeBron yesterday?
I actually thought LeBron would be even higher, and I totally had him as a lock.
Too. Yeah. So, that's me too. I at 100%, I thought he was a lock. I couldn't envision the winning lineup not having him in it.
Right, me either, and it didn't. I didn't have him in, of course. But then there's other times like today where I thought, what really dictates it for me is this player a lock because he's so good or because the position is weak? And so for today with power forward Draymond Green, I thought Draymond should be probably 40 to 50% owned given his low floor that I've seen him put up many times in the regular season when all the big stars are healthy for the Warriors, which was the case. I thought, but I bet he'll be over 60% owned just because there's no other options at power forward. Went with Mirotic, it was like 10% owned because he definitely has the potential to get hot. But I only played GVP today.
Was he bad?
He was horrendous. So he really tanked my lineups. But I was fortunate enough to win the GVPs on the first day of the playoffs yesterday with LeBron in my lineup.
Yep.
Well in the playoffs. But yeah, today did not go nearly as well as yesterday because the Mirotic over Draymond Green it's laughable now. Looking at it, Draymond.
No. I mean, I don't think it. No, I said that's the thing, though. No, to me, it's not laughable at all. I mean, Mirotic, if you pay
the results are laughable. It's funny how bad it was.
Yeah, but I mean, as I've kind of one of the hardest things about DFS is especially if someone new is trying to reiterate to them how you can't look at results on any given night. I mean, their results are. I mean, in a way, yes. Ultimately, you want to make money and you have to look at results, but if you're just looking at like a 1 day sample, it's completely meaningless.
No, I tell guys that all the time. Like I would do the same thing, and that's something that I think really bugs people. Is that if I go into the chat tonight and people are complaining like, "Hey, Mirotic was just awful," and luckily I didn't tell them to play him over Green. But had I would say, you know what, I would do it again.
Yeah,
I would pick him again over Green because I'd say probably 40% of the time Mirotic is going to outscore Green, and that's going to be hugely helpful for my lineups. So. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's all about the process, and that's one of the things some of our users tweet out is #trust the process. And I'm just honored to be in the same category as Sam Hinkie. I think he's a great general manager. I think it's a shame he left the Sixers.
Yeah, well, and the new general manager. I mean, never should have got that job. It's a joke, and just for that Nerlens Noel trade in itself, he should be let go. But I'm entirely with you though. And end of the night. The amount of people, the trolls who will come after me, regardless. And as me and you discussed, every night we are going to have wrong picks because we're getting asked questions for every player. So we're going to be wrong on certain guys.
Right.
But like wrong is the word wrong in DFS. It's almost like the word value. It's kind of like a meaningless term. Like you. Like there's most nights I will not regret the choice I make because I did. There was a reason why I made that choice. Right. I spent hours researching, and my research for whatever reason guided me toward a certain player. So if it didn't work out, hell, we're freaking gambling. Like that's going to happen. Doesn't mean like the play was quote unquote wrong just because it didn't work out on that particular night.
Yeah, I think I've only actually regretted like one pick that I made in like the last 4 months, and it was simply because I missed something. I realized after the slate, wow, I did not see that, and that was the one time where I was very apologetic. Normally, I'm empathetic with my users. I understand that it's frustrating to lose. Apologetic for a pick that I definitely would do again because that was the right pick before it started.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, in every sport happens all the time. I think the last one, I don't remember, but I think with the Knicks, like Melo and a bunch of guys were ruled out. Like 6:54 Eastern, we had like 6 minutes to make a move. So to me, the guy who gets minutes is Kuzminskis if he gets minutes.
I told our guys not to do that. That was a crazy slate. He was like 40% and never left the bench.
Yeah, didn't play. Didn't,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Didn't play a second. Yeah, the ownership, he was way too highly owned. I think he was like in some of the tournaments I entered, he was like 30% owned. But like we can't predict that Hornacek's going to give him 0 minutes. It's just but things like that are going to happen in DFS. All right, then probably the most important question we have for you via Twitter is why does Paul Millsap absolutely positively suck, and why does Dwight Howard have a job? Thanks. So obviously this person must have played some Atlanta guys on Sunday when we're recording this, and that did not go over very well.
Yeah, I was on Twitter during that game, and I saw that tweet come in, and I was tagged, and I started cracking up. I thought that was funny. I don't think Millsap sucks, but he certainly wasn't very good. When that tweet came in, particularly, he was playing poorly. And the second question is very legitimate. Why does Dwight Howard have a job? I don't know. He's definitely good enough to be on a roster. But
dude, he has a job because he has a job because he has 17 kids. He needs to support the kids by 16 different mothers. I think
that's like he has a job. Why do teams continue to pay him so much to come lose? I don't know. I mean, he is explicitly stated that his career is a big success because he made money. I've never heard anyone say that he strikes them as a winner. No. I don't want to rag on too much, but I definitely would not want him on my team. And I'm not even a big Lakers fan, and it bothered me having him on the Lakers. I would go to games just for fun, and I didn't like watching him play. He just seems so lazy.
It was actually a shame because like back in the day when he was on Orlando and they had the team that made the finals with like Hedo Turkoglu, he was actually fun to watch. Like like Stan, like for whatever reason he bought into Stan Van Gundy's system and he understood. Look, I don't have an offensive game. I'll just get rebounds, block shots, play ferocious defense, and like dunk the ball and get offensive rebounds. And pass the ball to my shooters, and like he was good. And like I don't know why he then all of a sudden he had like one summer where he worked with Akeem Olajuwon, and then he thought he was Akeem Olajuwon.
Right, he thought he was good. Hopefully that never happens to Andre Drummond. Hopefully no one ever tells him that he's good enough to stop putting in effort on the boards.
Yeah, I mean, him and effort. Yeah, that's I don't think that's those two things don't go hand in hand. All right, so next question up, and this is something. So the question is, does Justin use the Vegas man? And my listeners, so this started one day, Justin. It was now it must have been a month ago or so when Allen Big Sauce Williams for the Suns was a pretty good play. There was a stretch during this season similar to like the Hernan Gomez that we talked about, where Big Sauce Williams was super consistent every night. And he was relatively cheap especially on FanDuel. And his ownership was around 15, 20%. And then all of a sudden one day when he was a really good play, he was like 0.2% owned. Something didn't smell right. It seemed shady. It seemed suspicious. I did some digging around, and I did actually find out that a lot of professionals or people who do this for a living, they pay a guy, and that's why I came up with a quote unquote called the Vegas man. They pay a guy who's like a kind of an insider who helps professional gamblers, who has inside information on every kind of sports team, and he'll basically provide kind of medical advice or any advice regarding resting, tanking, whatever that may be. Now, I don't think I didn't find out anything specific about that game in Big Sauce Williams, but in terms of like injury news and things like that, do you have a quote unquote Vegas man, or are you just kind of how do you go about that stuff? Are you just kind of monitoring Twitter like the rest of us? What's your strategy?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I have some connections with a few teams, a few players here and there, but I really don't. I don't have a guy, and I have heard about that. And I've never heard him called necessarily the Vegas man, but I have heard that the big sharks pay insiders to kind of leak some information specifically to them. And so that is something that I wonder if the future of DFS will have insider trading rules. That I've always wondered that. Every now and then I'll get information. I'll be at a game and I'll talk to a player before the game and he'll say something like, "Oh yeah, our pitcher, he's not feeling well." And it's just like such a brief remark. It doesn't really matter to them. but I think, oh, I might stack against him in DFS, and then I think, I don't know if this is allowed. Like, is this insider trading? And there's no rules about that. And so I'm thinking at some point there might be rules where it's probably unenforceable, but it'll say you're not allowed to contact people affiliated with teams to find out about stuff like that. Because yeah, we recently had a player in NASCAR who we thought would be pretty highly owned, and he was like 5% owned in the high stakes leagues, and his car didn't start at the race. He had to go into the garage when his car wouldn't start, and he didn't get out there for like 12 laps, so he automatically finished in last. And I was very suspicious about why he was so low owned.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, a couple follow-ups. One, wait, how are you talking to players? Two, and then I think you said something like you had an interview today with like a player, right? So what role are you in that capacity where you're talking to players, which is pretty cool. I don't know if that's DFS related or not, but that still would be cool to know. And then two, now I think I'm forgetting two. All right, just answer that one, then I'll try to think of the other thing I was going to ask.
So I generally don't talk to players about DFS related stuff. So it's kind of thing. I'm in some sports journalism classes that kind of
nice. Okay.
I'm more like writing story, because I don't try not to bother guys about something that only benefits me. I think that's kind of putting them in an uncomfortable situation, and I don't want to win that way, because like we were talking about before the show started, I try to play in such a way that our users could replicate. And so it's important to me that our users can and if I have an advantage that I can provide to them, I will, but I'm not going to go hounding people that I know inside the industry and bothering them for information that other people can't get. Because I really like to preserve the competitive nature of DFS. And it's important to me that DFS survives, not just me personally profiting from it, but I want the whole industry to survive. And I think it would be negative to DFS if I was trying to
stuff
like that.
What the hell kind of phrase did you just say? Like, that phrase should never be used on this podcast. That is way too serious. That sounds way too professional for this podcast.
My bad.
But no. I mean, that does make sense. All right, I realized my other follow-up was when you were talking about, will there be regulations? No, DFS, and this is one reason. One of the few good things that came out, 2 3 years ago when FanDuel, DraftKings, they made the idiotic, moronic, clownish decisions to go on to spend $1 bazillion in advertising, and they got way too greedy, and DFS, it was like the wild, wild west. There was zero regulations. You had people on FanDuel playing on FanDuel, the people who worked for FanDuel playing on FanDuel, taking down tournaments. It had all kinds of insider quote unquote trading crap going on. I think some of that's been curtailed, but like you said, like right now, that there's still a ton of suspicious, activity going on that needs to be rectified going forward. So like that was one of my other questions for you. It's not a lovely Twitter question, but just like, where do you see DFS in a few years? Because to me, it's just, man, like, especially I don't like the kind of the decisions that FanDuel and DraftKings have been making lately, and if they merge, it seems like there needs to be something done to stop the greed from these sites.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
So I do know quite a few of the guys who are at the top of these companies, and I've had the privilege of meeting some of them and talking to other people about them. And the guys who have made some of the most erroneous decisions, they're no longer capable of making those decisions again. And so the companies themselves have become a lot more professional. I actually think that the bad PR they get and the bad reputations that they have, it's kind of unfair. It's a lot like the athletes at UNC who get criticized for Rashad McCants not going to class. It's kind of like the people who preceded them are now getting nothing against them, and the people who didn't do anything wrong are now getting all the torment that follows. And so I actually think that the merger could be good for the industry, partly because the legal battle would be so much more effectively run if DraftKings wasn't just doing something totally over here, and then FanDuel is doing something totally over here. And it would be better if they just met in the middle and they had one unified plan, because they're both wanting to legitimize the industry with legal discussions with legislators. Right. And so they both want to do it the right way, but it would just be so much more effective if they were all working together. And so they're getting to that point now. I've met with people from both sites at the same time working on legislative stuff in North Carolina. And I do everything I can to help out with that because, like I said, the industry survival is important to me. And I think it can definitely be done the right way. And there are things that they still need to get done, but I think they've taken a ton of steps in the right direction, actually.
So what's the biggest change that you think needs to be made to DFS?
Oof, that's an interesting question. I actually think that it would be helpful if there were fewer sites that were offering it, but I know that's like the complete opposite of like the monopoly, like antitrust laws. I think it's actually more difficult when you've got all these new sites popping up promising that the sharks aren't on our site. It's so much easier to play here. It would be kind of better if it was like Vegas, where everyone is playing by one spread pretty much and one line, and they might adjust a little bit, but it's not like you can go to one sports book and bet the Dolphins +7, and then the other one they're -3. And that's kind of how it feels like DFS is. So someone tells you, hey, I really like the Dolphins. You're like, well, do I take a -3 even if they're +7 over here? That would be so confusing. And I feel like DFS is kind of like that now, where it's just hard for people to know. Like, they have to learn the new rules of all these new sites that keep popping up. And some of the sites just get so bizarre with their rules that it's just really hard to comprehend. And I have people ask me on Twitter about other sites all the time, and I really just have to limit myself to FanDuel and DraftKings only, because doing the other sites it just becomes too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like you said, I mean, having only one site would go kind of counterintuitive to the monopoly status, and kind of most people's thinking of, you know, the more competition you have, the better it is for consumers, because if you have only one person, one company in charge, they can do that whatever the hell they want, right? And I mean, and the consumers would be kind of at their mercy. So I mean, like, if DraftKings and FanDuel merge, like you said, if the people at top now have been changed and now they are making better decisions for the consumers, I think that would be a good thing. But, you know, can we trust that? That's where I get nervous.
Yeah, I think that they actually have to commit to a lot of rules that they can never change. I don't think they can ever increase their rake if they do this. I don't think that they can adjust rules to make it worse for new players at all. I don't think they can like lift multi-entry limits. Things like that are actually dictated by the government.
Right, yep.
And they've negotiated those things with legislators. It's not just all voluntary. So I actually think we're more protected than people think from a corrupt person getting to the top of one of these companies and just ruining it for everybody.
All right, and on that positive note,
Yeah.
we will end the show. But so before we do, and thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on the show. I think this was super helpful. I mean, I think it's good for listeners to hear the top players, the strategies they have. And again, everyone listening, you know, just because this has worked for Justin doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Absolutely.
Like, and you guys you have to be, you know, cognizant of that fact that, you know, everyone kind of has to find their own path, their own way to play. But it's a really fascinating, interesting way that's worked for you, and I think it could be successful for a lot of the listeners out there as well. So I definitely want to say thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, to the users, like, just like what you said, I read like 4 or 5 different books specifically about baseball stats and fantasy sports strategy before I really like made my own strategy that was unique. And so I would say pick and choose the things that I said that you think that really resonates with kind of what I'm feeling and what I've thought about DFS with it. But don't feel like you need to go adjust your whole strategy every time successful tells you what made them successful.
Yeah, and that's why I tell people, like, that's how you know it's been a successful pod. You know, for like a typical, you know, it's a regular podcast for, you know, listening, trying to figure out about how to, you know, who to play on a slate. If you can just take away like 1 or 2 good things from a podcast, I think that's a successful, you know, use of your time. So hopefully there's at least 1 or 2 things that Justin said here that you'll be like, huh, I never tried that, or I never thought that. I thought about it, you know, DFS, like, you know, in that way. And hopefully it can start giving you better results. So all right, why don't you again plug the website, also where people can find you on Twitter as well, man?
Yeah, so our site, all of our free content is on Daily Fantasy Insider.
Yeah, that's the thing. So what can people currently get? And maybe we'll talk off air if you can give my listeners a little trial run or something.
Yeah, we can definitely work something out for that. So
as well. But yeah, why don't you tell everyone like kind of where, like, what they can get currently for like the free content?
Yeah, so we actually have strategy guides on dfiuniversity.com that cost money, but you can get free sections from the strategy guides to just kind of get a sample of what the rest of it will contain. That's on dailyfantasyinsider.com. Also on that, we have all of our weather-related spotlights we actually have a meteorologist who's a weatherman in Atlanta for us on the weather for each slate. And we have our free must-haves for every main slate for all the sports that are on DraftKings and FanDuel. That's all for free on dailyfantasyinsider.com. It's important to us that we contribute to the industry, people who don't want to pay anything. And then on dfiuniversity.com, that's where you can really talk to our experts. You get the header where it narrows down the plays, like we said. And we almost have this thing called a war room finished. I'm super excited about this. I've been pumped for it for almost a year. It's going to totally innovate the way that we do things at DFI. And so I don't want to waste too much time talking about that, but that's going to be awesome. And that should be ready within the next few weeks.
Okay. And again, so you guys do every sport too, right? So it's.
Yeah. We cover every sport on DraftKings and FanDuel. And so, yeah, whatever you're looking for, we have the all sports package. It's $50 a month, and you get access to every article we write, every single chat for every sport.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. So again, thanks for coming on the show, Justin. I think it was really cool. It was really enlightening. Yeah, I know I learned some things as well. So it was really cool to chat. Everyone out there, check out his website. Obviously the free content, and then if you like it, maybe you will pay for some of that stuff as well. And follow him on Twitter. And if anyone has any questions, what's the best way to reach you? Probably Twitter, I guess, these days, right?
Yeah. My DMs are always open. I don't check them all that often. So if it's important, feel free to tweet at me. If you just want me to get to it in the next week, feel free to send it in a DM.
Also, everyone can make fun of him for being a Warriors fan because they ruined DFS, yet he loves the Warriors. And then that's about it. So, yeah, again, thanks for coming on the show. And all right, guys, that's it for this special edition of DG Courtroom. And I don't know when I'll see you next, but you'll hear me on Dash Radio in the near future, probably tomorrow. Not sure when. But that's it. So for me, for the bailiff, for Justin, court is adjourned.